Hi everyone, this is Chef Nicholas Lodge here. I'm here to talk about my Nicholas Lodge collection of dusting powders by Sugarin. Now this range at the moment includes 25 dusting powders. 23 of them are matte finish powders, and then there is a pearl and also a sparkle dust, which I'm going to talk about and show you those. We are at the moment working on 15 other colors, so eventually there will be 40 colors, 38 dusting powders, and then, as I said, a pearl dust and a sparkle dust. So I'm going to first of all talk a little bit about the coloring, the colors, the packaging, things like how to open them, and then we're going to show you how to use them to dust flowers and do some different techniques. So here you can see this shows the dusting powders. All right, so these are really nice packaging, nice sturdy containers. Little tip: when you finish with them, you can keep them, wash these out, and then you can use these for blended colors. But they come, as I said, the moment there are 23 colors that are matte finish. All right, so matte finish means that it's sort of a dull finish we use mostly for dusting flowers. And then also there is the white sparkle and the white pearl. All right, the sparkle dust has got bigger particles. I'm going to talk about that a little later, and also the pearl dust as well. Now, when you buy the colors, obviously to open the colors, just a question of opening the top like this. There is a foil seal here, so this just is taken off. And that will obviously, do that carefully, give you the powder. Obviously when you get the powder, you can clean that up. Now we're going to, first of all, I'm going to talk about using them as a color, because you can actually color paste with these. Sometimes, especially when you want very pastel colors, like you wanted a really, really pale green, you could actually use the light apple green. This could be used to color your white paste for, say, for example, a Cymbidium orchid. You could also use this to color sort of a purple color. Generally, when I use powder colors to color my flexi paste, what I would recommend is these are water and fat soluble, and so usually I just dissolve the powder in a little bit of fat, so that means vegetable fat, vegetable shortening, or like coconut oil, but generally a solid type of oil. This, for example, is just a little lid here, and I just take a little tiny bit of, this is Crisco shortening, so just a little tiny bit of that, and then just take a little bit of my powder. Just this will dissolve the pigmentation of the powder. So it's generally the way I prefer. And in pastry, we use this in buttercream, because buttercream is fat soluble. For example, you can use these to color buttercream with these as well. And so we're just going to blend this together. And then we will take a little bit of my white flexi paste. So for example, you were doing some little hydrangeas, violets, something like that. And you use a little bit of this color into there, and just mix this through. You see how that's going to give you. So if you're making lilacs, flowers like that, if you wanted to make it a little bit darker, you can actually even store these in little tiny containers. And there you see you have a beautiful flexi paste in a sort of lilac color to make lilac, wisteria, sweet peas, whatever you wanted to make in that color. All right, so that is one use of the colors. Generally speaking, when I'm making really intense colors, I would use some of the other Sugarin line of colors that are particularly made, obviously gel colors, and are made for obviously dark colors, but for especially pastels, can use the dusting powders if you don't have any paste or gel colors of that color. Now, once we've used the powders, so first of all, when you use the powders are very concentrated, so the colors are very intense. So a lot of times I will actually de-intensify the color by adding corn flour or cornstarch to it. All right. So what that means is you're taking the color, adding a little bit of corn flour or cornstarch to the product. Now you can either do that in a little container. So this shows you two colors I use quite a lot in my classes. This is daffodil yellow. This is daffodil with a lot of corn flour or cornstarch. I use this, for example, for the creamy yellow in the center of the gardenia. It's just a really, really soft creamy yellow, or like on magnolias or flowers like that. When I'm doing, also I use a lot of pale chocolate. On flowers like hydrangeas and things. Again, this is chocolate brown, and this is with corn flour, cornstarch. So when you use that, you can of course just mark that with a marker or a little label maker on the top and keep that marked as pale chocolate and pale daffodil. When you do that, also of course you can do that as you are working with it. So for example, like you can see here, these beautiful delphiniums that I've just made recently in my Flower Pro Club. These were dusted with a periwinkle color. So this is the periwinkle. I used that color straight out of the pot. And then what I then did is I went on top of that, I used the deep purple, but I made it a little less intense by using some corn flour added to it. So usually it's a good idea when you're making flowers to make an extra petal or an extra flower. You can try the color on your sample one before you then obviously make it on the one that's going to stay. Because when dusting powders go on, if they're put on too dark, then you're you can't do anything about it. All right, so you want to make sure that you have that. Now first I will start off with just talking a little bit about the pearl dust. This is the Super Pearl White Pearl, all right? So this is a pearl dust. So think of it a little bit like when you're doing cosmetics. This would be like a little bit like an eyeshadow. I should show you on my hand here. So this is going to give you a pearlescent look, all right? So it's a pearlescent look, like a little bit like an eyeshadow. So this would be used, for example, when you're doing a flower like a gardenia. I would do this all over the petals. So you would then put this obviously this all over the petals. And then when you steam this, when steam hits this, it's going to give the waxy look to the flower. So when you're doing flowers like calla lilies, stephanotis, lily of the valley, like white orchids, I usually use the pearl dust. All right, this is the white pearl. And when you obviously put colors, you can put them onto a little dish, either a little dish you can wash, a little disposable dish. You can also do this directly onto a napkin as well. So you could take this and you could put this straight onto. So for example, you can also just take some and put it onto a paper towel. This is what I generally do in most of my demonstrations and things. In my classes, I use little ceramic dishes and then just wash them at the end. So you see, this will give you a base color. This is actually like a lotus water lily bud. So you can put a little bit of pearl dust onto this. I can show you how this steams. So this is going to give you a pearlescent look onto there. So this is like almost a foundation or a base we would often put on white flowers. Not all white flowers, but especially flowers in real life like gardenias that are waxy looking. We can also use for example, for cake, when you're doing things like pearls, decorations on the cake, bows, things like that. You can also mix this product. This can be mixed with vodka to make it paintable. But usually most of the time, when you add vodka to this, it's going to go a little bit milky. But I often do that when I'm using the white sparkle. So this one here. So the white sparkle. Now I put some of this on the little dish. You see this has got bigger particles, all right? And when we put this on my hand, you can see how this is more translucent. It's not as opaque. So it's got sort of more of a sparkly look to it, all right? But as I said, but this one I use a lot on cake. Like when I teach, for example, white pearls, what I would do is I put the white sparkle on a little dish. I would add a couple of drops of vodka to this so it evaporates quickly. And you just mix this up like this. And then when you paint that on the white pearls, so if you were painting this onto white pearls, it's going to, obviously when the vodka evaporates, it's going to give a really, really nice sparkly look, all right? So that the white sparkle I use mostly on cakes, all right? I don't very often use that on flowers. But the Super Pearl I use on obviously flowers. So the white sparkle and the white pearl, those are, as I said, obviously both of them have got the pearlized. Now also you can, for example, when you are making flowers, let's say like eucalyptus or dusty miller or flowers like that, Sometimes we want like a pearlescent look on the leaves. So what you actually can do there is you can take some, for example, take some color. Like you can take your color here. So this is with the Super Pearl. And then you can take a little bit of eucalyptus dust. So this is, for example, like the eucalyptus. Just over the top of that. You can generally just remove the foil. That's usually the easiest thing to do. And you can add a little bit of eucalyptus. So you see now what we have created is we've created a eucalyptus pearl. And so again, I use this on quite a lot of different flowers. But so this is going to give us the eucalyptus pearl color. So you see when you do this, for example, on say like Dusty Miller or on eucalyptus, you would just dust that onto the leaf. You can also do that, you see, over the petal here, both sides of the petal. Okay, brushes generally wash them a little bit of washing up liquid dish soap and let them dry, put them in a food dehydrator to dry. Then a lot of time I use the chocolate, the pale chocolate. So then, for example, like if I was doing eucalyptus or the Dusty Miller, I would then put a little bit of pale chocolate. This is the chocolate with the corn starch there, flour. And you see then you're going to get this nice pearlescent. And of course then when it's assembled, I will show you some steaming in a little while, but when we steam, so anything that has pearl or dusting powders with pearl added to it, so which means that's why we only have one pearl dust with the white pearl, and that gives you a foundation that you can add pink or purple or any color to that. So whenever you're doing flowers or cakes, you can mix other colors into that. So that would be how we would do, as I said, using the pearl dust. So most of the time we use them dry. So white sparkle is really more suitable and designed really for cake, and white pearl is for flowers. Now when you are doing, for example, in my earlier DVD I've done, which shows how to do, you're talking about the flexi paste, you know, obviously we have the rosebud that I showed in that particular video. So just to give you an idea about how the colors would work as far as like on flowers, and I'm going to show you some various color and blending techniques. When you are using that, so I'm going to take ruby. So ruby is obviously a red here, so I'm going to take a little bit of ruby. So obviously gets its name from the ruby stone. I'm going to use, first of all, a round brush. Now, round brush is going to be used for the eye of the rose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of pounce the color, the darker color, into the middle of the rose. So that's going to give you a slightly darker center. And then I'm going to change over to a flat brush. Of course, if you were doing a flower like a camellia, you know, your red roses with you do the center on all of them. Then we take the red here, and I'm going to brush from the source away from the source, which means that you're brushing the color just on the edge, and the color will dissipate as it comes down. So you only brush in one direction, all right? And that's going to give you the color onto the edge of the petals. Now it's going to be quite subtle. When we steam it, it will intensify the color. And then you will take a smaller round brush, and I'm going to use some aubergine. Now the aubergine is like an eggplant color. We in the US call it obviously eggplant. In some countries it's called aubergine. And so you're going to then do this into the center. So that's going to go into the eye. So that will just give that sort of center of the rose that darker color. Okay. Now when you're putting on roses, like if I was doing, for example, like this David Austin style rose, this blush colored rose, if I was going to put green on there, of course, and I'll show you this, I could use like the light apple green or apple green with some cornstarch added, and it would notice. But when you put color on dark colors, all right, so for example, when you are doing a rose, a camellia, or whatever, you might want to put like a little bit of green on the base of the petals. What we do there is we use the the white dust. So this is white, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to just actually blend some white and then green of choice. So you're going to take some white dust. Now that is going to make the powder opaque, not translucent, which means if you were dusting onto a dark color like a purple orchid or a red rose, and you want to dust, let's say on the purple orchid you wanted to dust some yellow into the throat. If I just took yellow and dusted on purple, you won't notice. So what I do is use white powder and then you'd add the yellow to that. And what that does, it makes the color then opaque. This is some of my green, my apple green, approximately equal amounts usually I do on this. You see, so now having the white as a base, it's a little bit like when we think of cosmetics, it's like a foundation. So you have your color onto there. So then I can go in between, so I can put a little bit of green on the base of the rose. So a little bit of green there. Then when we steam that, that will obviously become more noticeable. So you can just put the green on the center of the rose there, okay? Just don't load too much color onto there. And that will, when it's steamed, it's going to give you a sort of a palish green. But if we didn't have the white in there, it wouldn't notice, okay? I'm just showing you lots of different sort of techniques with using the powder and how you use them. Then, of course, we can go in with a foliage green. Foliage green is a color I use a lot. Use this a lot on, obviously, with my flexi paste. So this is my green flexi paste. It's beautiful. So that's a foliage green flexi paste, and this is the foliage green dust, which is going to be darker. So then we see I'm just going to use my foliage green. So I will go down the center of the calyx. So this is going to make a little darker in the center of the calyx. You get like almost a little stripe. And then what I would do is I would then dust some foliage green. And if you were going to do covered stems, like I showed you, would obviously dust over the stems as well. Okay. Of course, you can add a little bit of accent color. So we can use the aubergine or the ruby. Could be put if you've got thorns, like go on the edge at the top of the thorn. That's just going to give a little highlight there to the thorn, a little bit of the color onto there. And generally, you just keep your dusts, your dusting powders, and then when you, just to show you here, obviously we've done this one now, just to show you when we steam it, what will happen? Steam is going to change the look of the flower immensely. So you will just gently steam this. Now I'm using a small clothes steamer, portable little clothes steamer for travel. You can also use a tea kettle, but a tea kettle is a little bit more severe. Another thing you can do is use a saucepan of water, put some water in it, some foil over the top of the water saucepan, make some holes with a bamboo skewer, and then you'll have a gentle steam. And if you have a rice cooker, if you have an electric rice cooker, you can also steam your flowers while you're cooking dinner, okay? But this is will actually sort of bring our rose to life. So I'm going to just gently steam this. So I'm going to hold this a few inches away from and here. I'm just going to steam my rose. And then the color will set the color, and you get that beautiful sort of intense color in the middle of the rose. And remember, if you want the green, if you want it like not quite as sort of creamy color, I wanted that contrast you often get on the roses, on the bottom of the rose. You can just use, of course, like less white and more green. But showing for example, the eucalyptus. So when we use eucalyptus, when you put the pearl dust onto there, you see how it brings but you see how then it makes it like a little bit of iridescent. So you get that beautiful sort of sheen you get on eucalyptus. So pearl dust and then white. Now, and then when techniques as far as coloring go, we often, as I said, dilute the colors. They're all very, very intense. So for example, like on on the David Austin rose here, I've got actually some cosmos and orange. So I have these two colors here, cosmos and orange. And you see if I take those, the David Austin rose is made in a really very pale blush color. But if I would then add a little bit of cornflower to it, you see that cornflower you add to that, and that will make it lighter, okay? And then if you're not sure about the intensity of color, you can mix this through. You see, so I've made that sort of like obviously almost a darker blush color. And then you see again, you know, when I brush that onto the edge of the petals, just brush from the outside to the inside, you're just going to get that sort of darker color. We've just got the air conditioning on, so the fan is blowing it a little bit. But see, so you're going to get that darker color on your rose. So you can make the outside petals darker, so you could do the whole thing darker. Or if you want the color just on the edge, you just brush with that flat brush from the outside to the inside. So you can either sort of change the color of something, or you can just brush to give you intensity of color on the edge. So it depends on sort of what, you know, what sort of effect you want with the dusting powders. And when you're doing something like, say on this water lily, you can see here on the water lily, I just have this softest pink blush on the edge of the petals, all right? So, you know, when you're doing that technique, you would again I've used Cosmos with a lot of cornflower in there. And you were just going to use so if you were doing your petals there, I'm just showing you the sort of blush color, but you just brush from the outside to the inside, and that just gives you the color. So you just very softly brush from the outside to the inside. That gives you the color just on the edge. So flat brush is used when we want sort of color just onto the edge. Okay, because I could add some pale green to that, and then you can build up some other colors on top. When you're using some of the darker colors, you know, like for example, the aubergine we've just used. That's the color I used here on this dahlia. So you can see this beautiful color on this dahlia. This was made in a sort of almost like a sort of a burgundy beet color, and then dusted. And I actually have used on that one, I've used first of all, Ondina Rose. Now, the Ondina Rose is a gray mauve color. It's really pretty as well. You can obviously add cornflower to that to make it less intense. So I've used the Ondina Rose there. And you see this I use a lot on succulents and flowers like that. So you brush all over the back of this with this color. So I'm going to brush all over the back. So that's something I often do on foliage, is to use different colors. So you see the back has been done with this Ondina Rose. And then I would take the aubergine color. And I'm going to brush that around the edge. So just going to brush that around the edge. So I'm brushing again from the source. So you're just going to get this darker color. Remember, don't load too much color on the brush. Also, never ever take powder straight from the pot. All right, you always want to put it onto a paper towel napkin first. And again, we're going to put so you get a darker color around the edge. Then I'm going to use this as an angle flat brush. I'm going to brush a stripe of the aubergine down the center. So you get a stripe down the center. And again, you could use the green and white combination. Or you could use a darker green or a brighter green, like for example, like the apple green as well. You could take a little bit of that. But see, also if you want just a little tiny bit of an opaqueness to it, you just use the smallest amount of white into there. So it depends on how intense you want the green to be, but remember, adding the white is going to make it opaque. So then when you put that on there, you see how you're going to get the green is going to be visible. And when that is steamed, it's going to give you a sort of a beautiful color onto there. So when we steam this, it will bring the flowers to life. It intensifies the color, So again, you can see how we're just gonna steam that. So here you see how you'll have this lovely color, very subtle, but you've got the darker color there on the center, and then you've got this nice sort of gray color, gray mauve color on the back of it. So that would be sort of how you would do, for example, like the when I did the dahlia. And of course, blending the colors is something that you do, like I explained about the delphinium. So when I do, for example, like hydrangeas, you know, this has been made in a really, really pale green. I use just a little tiny bit in my foliage, but you could also take some of the actual, this color part dust with a little bit of shortening, vegetable fat, and then you could use that. So you see then when you put then we're going to brush over the flower with this the light apple green color. You're going to brush on the back as well. But of course this could be blue with purple on the edge. And then I'm going to use a little bit of pale chocolate. So I'm going to use some chocolate which has got some corn flour into it. Now we'll just brush that. So you see, I'm just going to brush that just gently around the edge. And then you're going to get that sort of really subtle color on the edge of your flower. And a lot of times when I'm doing, for example, white sparkle, which is the dust that I use more for cake, I do sometimes use that as a finishing dust. So like when I make hydrangeas, for example, I would then go in with the white sparkle, and I would put with the white sparkle, I would put that on the top as a finishing dust. Because, for example, hydrangeas have a little bit of a sort of a sparkle to them, so then I would use that as a finishing dust. So you see, I'm just gently going over the top of the flower with a little bit of a white sparkle, but that's done after you've got the powder on. And then when that's steamed, it's going to give a very nice sort of natural look to the hydrangea. So if you look at some of my like Flower Pro videos or some of my YouTube videos before Flower Pro, you'll see I've got techniques on using the dust. But that means when you steam that, what's going to happen is when the steam dries, your hydrangeas are still going to have a little bit of a sort of sparkle to them. So it's a very nice natural way to color them. So I do use sometimes sparkle dust as almost a finishing dust. After you've got the powders on, you then add the dust onto that. But so that's really the basics of the dust in powders. You use them, you can use them for coloring. Remember, it's best to usually just dissolve them in a little bit of vegetable fat. And then, but you can also, of course, mix the colors with corn flour, cornstarch to make them less intense. You can blend the colors, and then, like I showed you, the cosmos and the orange. Or, of course, you can also then add corn flour to that to make the color less intense. And then remember, when you want to use the color on dark colors like red and purple, yellow throat in an orchid, green on a purple orchid or red rose, you can use some white dust mixed with some color of choice, green of choice or yellow, for example, and then that will make it opaque, which means it's going to cut out the background color. So I hope you've enjoyed this video of really how to use my dust in powders. Look forward to using these. Remember, as I said, at the moment there are 25 dusts, 23 of the regular matte finish flower dusts, and then the pearl dust, which is the white pearl, and then also the white sparkle, which, remember, both of those you can use obviously dry or with alcohol, but also you can use extra dust added to them like I showed you with the eucalyptus. Until next time, this has been Chef Nick's Lodge. Sweet wishes. Bye.